Hi, everyone. My name is Zela Astarjan, and I'm your AWA host today. I welcome you to another of AWA's virtual events. Today, we have an open conversation about how to navigate a legal career. We will discuss the journey from law school applications to law school, and finally, on becoming a lawyer and what a day-to-day life of a lawyer looks like. There's going to be plenty of time for Q&A. So please feel free to ask questions in the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Before we get into the discourse, I wanted to remind you about AWA's mission and the 3 pillars that we're currently focusing on. Our mission is simple. It is to connect and elevate women globally. I'm going to please ask you to type in the chat box at the bottom of your screen, the city, state that you're joining us from. It'd be nice to see where you're coming from, because with the virtual events that we've had folks joining us from Egypt, from Australia, from France. It's been very exciting. Anyway, as to how we elevate Armenian women, we do that through 3 strategic focus areas. Number 1, health and wellness, because we feel like supporting a woman's right and power to be aware and in control of her physical, mental well-being is very important. And under this pillar, we support domestic violence programs, especially in Armenia. Number 2, our second area of focus is education. We believe that to educate is to liberate. And we do that by giving thousands of scholarships every year. This past year, we gave $90,000 in scholarships. Today's webinar falls into this education category, but it also comes into our third area of focus, which is economic empowerment, because without financial freedom, women sometimes have to make some really difficult choices, as you know. Before I get into more detail, I just want to remind you that we have an AWA conference in Yerevan this coming October 5 to 8, and it's on our website, and we're going to have more detail as we go. So please join us, put that on your calendar. It's going to be wonderful to meet with wonderful women from all over the world. So I'm Zela Astarjan. I'm an AWA board member and currently serve as vice president of the central board. And I'm going to be your moderator today. I work in the investment industry for years and years. I'm not a lawyer, full disclosure. So today we're lucky to have 2 first-generation lawyers of Armenian descent. Let me introduce you to the panelists briefly, and then we're going to just get into some fun questions. And we have 2 polls, too, that we're going to get into. So Alexa Millinger is of Armenian descent. She grew up attending Camp Hayastan here in the Boston area in Foxborough. She's a member of the litigation department at Hinckley Allen, and she regularly represents clients in complex business disputes. Her practice includes a wide variety of case types in state, federal court, including contract disputes, employment disputes, and negligence actions, as well as mediation and arbitration. Alexa also engages in pro bono work on behalf of asylum seekers, inmates, veterans, among others. So Seta Eskanian Accaoui is actually one of our own. She's one of our AWA New England affiliate leadership members. Lucky to have her as a lawyer. She's an attorney at Hinckley Allen also, and she's successfully represented clients in a variety of commercial litigation matters and specializes in toxic torts, products, liability, insurance defense. Additionally, she does a lot of nonprofit work. She's handled several pro bono projects, including representing small Armenian business owners and assisting the Armenian Bar Association with research and writing to raise international law violations for sanctioning Azerbaijan's forces for using cluster munitions and artillery rockets during the Artsakh War. She also mentors law students. Anyway, enough about introductions. I think you'll get to know them as we speak. So I just want to launch this poll quickly, and feel free to, here. Let's take a minute for you to answer these questions.
Zela, while you're doing that, it looks like somebody said the chat is disabled.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I'll have to figure this out. This happened to me last time. I don't know how I did it. Okay, the answers are coming in. Okay, so it looks like we have a lot of high school students. 33% of the attendees today are, actually 50% are high school students. We also have 50% who are college grads. And another question that we had asked was, are you interested in continued webinar series on legal pathways? If yes, please choose from the below choices. I think what we're coming up with is, everybody wants to learn about how to work at a law firm. Seta and Alexa, you can see the answers, right? And folks want to be lobbyists, legal. I guess they're interested in everything, how to become a lobbyist, legal consulting work, political work, and judicial work. So anyway, I'm going to end the poll. Here, I guess I can share the results. Can you see the results?
Yep.
Do you see it for both questions?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, let's get into our discussion. So I guess for the first question, I wanted to ask you, can you each discuss your paths on how you became attorneys? Maybe talk about your undergrad majors, exams that you had to take, prep courses you had to take. I know those LSAT exams are not a lot of fun. And tell us a little bit about what kind of work you currently do. And also, I think a lot of people are not like, what does a typical day look like for a lawyer like you? So who wants to start? Seta, you want to start?
Sure. Okay, so Seta Accaoui. I currently live in Rhode Island. I'm born and raised in Massachusetts. I went to Armenian Sisters Academy, very involved with the Armenian community there. I went to Suffolk University in Boston for undergrad. I studied applied legal studies there. I currently serve on the advisory committee for that legal program at Suffolk University. Wonderful program. It's almost like a pre-law program that really sets you up for a legal career. A lot of the courses I was taking in my undergraduate studies were core courses you take in law school. So family law, constitutional law, criminal law. It was a really good segue for me, particularly for me who I knew I wanted to go into a legal career. So it was a great starting point for me. I went into law school knowing how to brief a case. It's a big thing. So I really enjoyed their pre-law program. I then went to New England Law on a scholarship. I really enjoyed my studies there. I took the LSAT before getting into law school. Exciting news for some people. They're considering, the ABA recently released that they are considering getting rid of the LSAT as a requirement. Law schools, it still needs to be approved, but in the meantime, this is a way for them to help diversify the profession because they look at the LSAT exam as a barrier. So I did take that exam. That's the law school admissions test exam. There are alternatives. Some schools will accept the GRE, but that was the exam I took to get into law school. In my law school studies, I did not specialize in anything. I kind of just took my core requirements, and then I dipped into several different fields. I did a clerkship at an immigration firm. I was really passionate about immigration law, and then I got really interested in real estate. And so I did an internship in real estate. I did a internship for the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office doing criminal prosecution. Again, so many different areas of law, and it kind of gave me an idea of what I really was interested and passionate about. So I did that, and then I took the bar exam November 25th in the summer of 2015. I passed and I started practicing, and as of this past Saturday, it's been 8 years that I've been practicing law, which is pretty crazy. It flies by, it really does. But in my beginning stage of my career, I started off working in real estate on the transactional side. And then I decided I wanted to go into litigation. So I made the switch. And the reason for that was I taught my mind to think analytically and research issues, apply it to facts, come up with a conclusion and problem solve throughout law school, that I really wanted to make the switch back into litigation. And I've been doing that ever since. So I specialize in toxic torts and products liability litigation, but I do a variety of commercial litigation, some real estate. So the nice thing about this practice is that you get to dip yourself into several different fields. That's about me and my pathway to my legal career. My typical day, what that looks like, it can get chaotic and really busy at times. I am a mother of a 2.5-year-old, so it's very tough balancing everything, but it gets done. And so I come into work, I get several assignments. I do a lot of depositions in my practice. So that's great experience cross-examining witnesses. I do a lot of brief writing for motion practice, a lot of arguing in court. And yeah, that's what my typical day looks like. All right.
Wow.
I'm going to pass it to you.
Yeah. So my path to becoming a lawyer was a little bit different from Seta's, because I did not know from a young age what I wanted to do like she did. So I took a little bit more of a roundabout path to getting to be a lawyer. But I'm from Connecticut. I did my undergrad at George Washington University in DC. And then after college, in college, I studied international affairs, and I thought I wanted to do, be in the foreign service or be a diplomat or have some sort of exciting career where I was traveling all around the world. So after college, I went to South America. I was involved with a program through my high school in Connecticut that had built a private school in Paraguay in South America. So I was asked to go down and run that school after I graduated college. So I was 22 years old, and I went to be the principal of a high school in Paraguay, which was an incredible experience. And that's a whole other webinar. I can tell you about that. But while I was there, I think I planted the initial seeds of wanting to go to law school. And I think it had something to do with being in a poor community, in a poor country, and seeing the law as a way to get things done and help people that didn't necessarily involve a lot of money. And the other side of it was that the role of women in the community that I lived in Paraguay was such that I felt having a law degree just lended some extra credibility as a woman that goes a long way. So when I was in Paraguay, I actually traveled to Buenos Aires, Argentina, and took the LSAT, the law school admission test, because I was thinking of law school, but didn't pull the trigger. I went back to Washington, D.C. after that, and I worked at a foreign policy think tank for a year, and pretty quickly realized that was a lot of fun, but it wasn't a career. And law just seemed like it made more sense as a career and had more of a logical path. And what really solidified the decision to go to law school for me was when I was deciding whether that was what I wanted to do, I sat in on a law school class at GW when I was living in DC. And I saw the students doing their moot court arguments. For anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's a mock appellate argument where you're taking cases and building an argument, and someone acts as a judge, usually a professor, and fires questions at the students while they're giving their argument. And the students, they're interrupted usually, and they have to respond to the questions on the spot. And I saw these law students doing that, and they were my age, but they just were so well prepared, and any question they got, they had the answer right away. And I just wanted to be able to do that. I didn't necessarily want to be a lawyer, but I wanted those skills that came with being a lawyer. So I still not 100% convinced I wanted to be a lawyer. I went back to Connecticut to state school where it was not very expensive and it felt like a low risk option. And I went to University of Connecticut for law school, and it was wonderful. I had a great time. Well, as great of a time as you can have in law school, I guess. And I graduated in 2014, and I started working at Hinckley Allen when I graduated, or actually I started working there during my second year summer when you do an internship. And I've been there ever since. I've been at Hinckley Allen for about 8 years now, which is as long as I've been practicing law. And I am also a litigator like Seta. So unfortunately, you don't get a diverse range of legal work from the two of us, but litigation is a really interesting area of law. And I do pretty general litigation, but to the extent I have a specialty, I do a lot of media and First Amendment law, which is my passion, I guess you could say, in the area of law. So we represent newspapers and journalists and a lot of defamation cases, and it's really interesting work.
Oh,
and
wow.
as for what my normal day looks like,
Yes.
just like Seta, there's no normal day, which I think is part of the fun of litigation and really keeps it interesting. Some days I'm going to court, which court these days is more often virtual, so you're not really going anywhere, but you still have to put on a blazer and look nice for a judge on the camera, at least your top half. I write a lot of briefs, do a lot of legal research, calls with clients, calls with opposing counsel, meetings with clients, depositions, which if anyone doesn't know what a deposition is, it's when you have a witness in a room and you're asking them questions to find out the facts that underlie a case. Those are the big things, but really anything can come up. Every day is different, and that's what I love about it.
Wow, very interesting. I love the idea of attending one of those classes, that moot court. What a great idea.
Yeah.
Seta, did you attend the class? I mean, can folks just, I don't know, when they're applying to law school, say, can I attend the class? Is that possible?
I'm sure it is. I think so.
And a lot of undergraduate programs have moot court teams too that you can participate in, and then even be on moot court teams and get involved in that way also.
Wow, that's great. I love the idea. Seta, I don't know, do you want to, you talked a little bit about what inspired you to become an attorney, but I don't know, did you want to elaborate some more? I mean, because it looks like for Alexa, it hit you when you were in Paraguay, right?
I think so. I think that's right.
Yeah.
So for me growing up, I'm a first generation attorney in the family, and I never grew up around any attorneys. And it wasn't until my parents were going through the naturalization process, they came here from Lebanon as immigrants, that I got exposed to the first attorney, and it was their immigration attorney. So I was really fascinated by immigration law. It's a funny story, but I was so young attending these meetings with my family that I was actually born here, so I was a citizen. Everyone else in my family was referred to as aliens.
Yeah.
So I was like so young to the point that I thought my family came from space. So alien is actually a term in immigration law for anyone who's not a citizen. And so it was these meetings that fascinated me with the law. And then in school, we read the book To Kill a Mockingbird, and it was Atticus Finch was the second exposure to somebody in law. And I was so fascinated by him. And he was a great activist. And I was like, all right, I'm really interested in a legal career. And I just, as a young female Armenian Lebanese student, I didn't really have a lot of mentorship and guidance in terms of, those were my actual only 2 exposures to lawyers. So I didn't have people to really tap into. So I really worked on building my network personally, and figuring out who I knew was a lawyer, and meeting them and talking to them and learning about what their day-to-day looked like and what they were doing and what practices they were practicing in. And it was me navigating it myself, not really having, they call it professional isolation, in terms of you don't really have much mentorship, and you're really building it on your own. So yeah, that's what fascinated me with it. I initially was really convinced I was going to become an immigration attorney, and then things change, and you'll soon realize that when you hit the job market and you try to figure out what's best for you and for your family. So yeah,
That's wonderful. So Alexa, I think maybe the next question is for you. What are some traits that one should have to become a successful lawyer?
It's funny, I do a lot of interviewing on law school campuses of students who want to work at our law firm. And one thing that a lot of them say to me in their interviews when I ask them the question of why they want to be a lawyer, answer I get a lot is that they love to argue, which I think is a hilarious answer, because I don't think that is one of the skills that you need to become a successful lawyer, but apparently there's a very common misconception that it is. I personally don't like to argue. I like intellectual oral arguments in front of a judge, but to me that's very different from arguing with your parents or your brother and sister or something like that. So I don't think liking to argue is in any way a skill that makes you a better lawyer or a prerequisite for being a lawyer. There's a lot of noise next to me. I don't know if you can hear that. They're painting the wall on the other side of the office. Okay.
That's fine.
Good. What I do think is a good skill to have, particularly in litigation, is curiosity, because you need to be a good litigator, you need to ask the right questions to lead you to the right answers. And so that involves thinking about things in such a way that you know the right questions to ask and you're digging deep enough and not just skimming the surface. But another really important skill, again, particularly in litigation, but probably in all areas of law, is being able to see the other side of an argument and not just getting tunnel vision sucked into what your point of view is. Because in litigation, at least, when you're arguing a case in front of a judge or arguing a case in a brief, you need to make your argument stronger. You need to be able to anticipate what the counter argument is going to be and build that into your argument. And if you can't see the weaknesses in your argument and see what the counter argument is going to be, you're at a disadvantage. So I think being able to see outside of your own opinion is a really important skill in law.
Seta, anything you want to add about traits one should have to become a good lawyer?
You absolutely nailed that, Alexa. And it's so important to be open-minded, like you said, to really anticipate what arguments they're going to raise and be able to nip it from the forefront. And that's what makes your argument stronger. So I agree with that.
So can you guys talk about the importance of networking, internships, mentorships, and all of that? I know it looks like both of you have done some interesting internships, but who wants to start?
I can start.
Okay.
Internships are definitely an invaluable experience, and I would highly recommend taking advantage of them as much as you possibly can. Definitely during law school, but even before law school. I think coming into law school especially, but also coming into a work situation after law school with some practical experience really puts you at such an advantage, because unfortunately in law school, you're not really taught how to be a lawyer. You're taught a lot of the theory and you're taught how to read cases and how to think, but it doesn't do a great job of preparing you for how to actually be a lawyer and what a lawyer does day to day. So that experience, you really need to make an effort to get outside of the classroom. So I when I was in law school, one of the best internships I had was with the Connecticut Attorney General's office, which was not something that I really necessarily ever wanted to do as a career. But for an internship, I was in the office of the Attorney General, the section that dealt with a lot of litigation from prison inmates. And prison inmates litigate a lot because A, they have a lot of time on their hands, and B, they have their fees waived for filing in court. So a normal person needs to pay a couple $100s to file a lawsuit. But if you can prove that you don't have that money, you don't have to pay anything. So a lot of prison inmates do that and file a lot of lawsuits. And the other important part of it is most of the time, not most of the time, but a lot of the time, it's pretty baseless litigation, doesn't have a lot of legal merit to it.
Yeah.
So, that's all to say that it's pretty low stakes litigation. So this office of the Attorney General's office just handed me cases as a first and second year law student. And I got to brief them myself, argue them myself when I was still in law school. And that was just really invaluable experience. And then when I was interviewing at law firms, I was able to talk about actual cases I worked on, which is not something that most law students are able to do. And have actual practical experience. So I'd say the importance of interning is huge, and get as much experience as you possibly can, even if it's not the most glamorous internship or at a big firm or something like that. Places that will give you experience is just invaluable.
Seta.
I'll add that mentorship and networking is also so critical in this field because, it's all about who you know at the end of the day. And I'll tell you, for example, when I was trying to make the move from transactional law to litigation, almost every job I was applying for required 3 to 5 years of experience. And I kind of hit this wall where it's like, well, how am I going to get that experience if nobody's hiring first year associates in litigation? And that's when I figured, let me tap into my Armenian network. So it was one of my friends whose name is Seta, actually, who linked me up with an Armenian partner at a very busy firm in Boston specializing in toxic torts and products liability. And when I reached out to her, she was like, I'm happy to connect you to. So we scheduled it as a dinner date. And, I say that because it's so important to not just email people asking for jobs, develop this natural relationship first. That is so important. We ended up closing out the restaurant that night. Just talking about our lives, our professional lives, and really getting to know each other. And me and this female partner just clicked. And after that dinner date, I reached out to her. I told her that I'm definitely interested in transitioning to litigation, and that this is my resume. Would you be able to help me ramp it up? Any professional insight that you can give me? And on her own, she decided she wanted to submit my resume to the firm that she practiced for. So I'll never forget that connection. And she really held my hand through this practice. I worked with her for 6 years, Jennifer Carson, if anyone knows her, but she is somebody I really contribute a lot of my professional development and achievements to, and I'm forever indebted to her. And this is just one example of an Armenian loving and really being so passionate about helping another Armenian female in this situation out in this profession. So to me, mentorship and networking is so important, and that goes for professional development. And then later on, you're going to be developing business, and developing those skills early on will help you so much in the long run, and even help you generate business too.
Wow, I love that networking story. I mean, you need to network to move on. I mean, I really, really, truly believe in networking. Such an important thing to do. Another question, do you need to have a practice area specialty in school, or do things develop, later on, or at what stage do you need to decide what you want to be working on?
You really don't need it in law school. And I think most people don't have one in law school. Really the only, I don't think I'm wrong in saying that really the only thing you need to choose at some point is whether you go in the litigation route or the transactional route. Those are the two big distinctions, or the one big distinction in the area of law, at least at a law firm. Litigators deal with people suing each other, and that involves going to court and writing briefs and everything that comes with that. The transactional side is corporate lawyers who represent companies doing transactions and mergers and things like that. Frankly, I don't know that much about what they do because I've never done that type of law, but it also encompasses real estate lawyers who are doing real estate closings, whether it be for big commercial projects or residential real estate. It encompasses trusts and estates, people writing wills, people, wills. I don't know that much about what they do either, but so all of that is the transactional side. And then the litigation or dispute side is the other thing. And there are not a ton of overlapping skills between those two big distinctions. So it's really difficult to do both unless you're at a really small law firm. Sometimes people do both transactional and litigation, but at a medium or large firm, you really need to make a decision about whether you want to go the litigation route or the transactional route. So that's something to start thinking about in law school, which direction you want to go in terms of litigation or transactional. But at least within litigation, you don't really need to have a specialty. And even I've been at my firm for almost 8 years now, or I guess almost 9 years now, and I'm still a pretty general litigator. I work on all types of cases, from environmental disputes to contract disputes to First Amendment to some white collar criminal work. So it really ranges. So I certainly don't have a specialty. Again, the only thing that you really need to decide is litigation or transactional.
Seta, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I'll add to that. I agree with Alexa. You don't need a specialty. There are some areas you can specialize in, like if you have an engineering background and you want to pursue a career in patent law, and there's a patent bar exam for that specialty, but you could do soft intellectual property type litigation that doesn't require the patent bar. So it really depends on what area, but in law school, obviously you have your core requirements your first year, which include like constitutional law, criminal law, property law, torts, and those are the subjects tested on the bar exam. So it's a good prep for the actual bar exam, which is what you need to pass in order to be able to get certified and licensed in a jurisdiction. So my only recommendation is in law school, once you finish your core requirements, you could select your electives. And so I took courses in several different subject areas to kind of figure out what I was most passionate about. So I did real estate transactions, I did land use and zoning, wills, estates and trusts, family law, just to kind of get an idea of what every practice really entailed. And so it was also a good prep for the bar exam too, because a lot of the courses I tried to take in law school were also subjects tested on the bar exam for when I was taking at the time. It was before the UBE was adopted. Now, anyone taking the bar exam going forward in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, you're going to be taking the UBE, but it was good to get those subjects out of the way and have a good prep come time for cram time when you're studying for the bar exam, because they're teaching you subjects in a matter of 2 days that I was taking as courses for a full semester. So it was nice having that as a initial prep. But yeah, I dipped into several different practice areas, and it was great. It was great getting all that experience in, and then each summer I tried to do an internship focused on those courses I was taking.
Was it tough to find those internships?
We had a great career services program at our school that I was able to land jobs from, but then I also did a lot of networking. For instance, I reached out to an Armenian attorney who had a very busy litigation practice and was able to intern the offices of Stephen Parnakin. So I interned for him too. So I always tapped into the Armenian network when it came to internships.
And we have a lot of lawyers, I think, in the Armenian community. So it's funny, when we were prepping a couple of weeks ago, I was surprised to hear that, there's a lack of diversity in the legal profession, because I work in the investment industry, and I often walk in and I'm the only female in the room. And I thought it was just our industry, but anyway, could you talk about the diversity in the legal profession and what can we do to improve on it? Who wants to start? Alexa?
Sure. Yeah, it's tough in the legal profession. It is typically a male-dominated profession, or it was for a long time. It still is male-dominated, white male-dominated, particularly. I would say, I'm trying to be as hopeful as possible. It is trending in the right direction. It's definitely not there yet. But there are a lot of efforts being made to increase diversity. I would say, especially in the past maybe 3 or 4 years, there's been a lot of focus on diversity at our firm, definitely, but I think that's representative of what the whole legal industry has been like. There's just been a lot of push to be aware of diversity, to hire more diverse people. And it's not even about hiring, it's about retention too. Once you hire more diversity, you need to make sure to include those people in projects and make them feel part of the team and excel at the same rate as everybody else. Otherwise they'll leave. And that's one of the issues with retaining women in law firms is women right now are graduating law school in higher numbers than men. I think it's slightly more than 50% of law school graduates are women, but the number of female partners at law firms is significantly less than men. It's a lot less. And I know Seta has some statistics on that, so I won't steal her thunder, but part of that is really just some unfortunate practical considerations, because law firms in particular are you're on billable hours. So if anyone doesn't know what that is, you're tracking all of your time that you spend working in a day, and you're billing it to a particular client. So if I worked on 5 different cases during the day, I have to record all of my time and everything that I did for those 5 different clients. And I have to be specific about what I did. And I have to track exactly how much time I spent. I spent 1.5 hours writing a letter to this client. I spent 45 minutes preparing for an oral argument, something like that. So billable hours are king at law firms, and there is somewhat of a mentality of you're only as good as your billable hours. You're definitely incentivized to bill more hours. You get more of a bonus if you bill more hours. This is how most law firms are. So billable hours are a focus at law firms. And what that translates to for women is a lot of women are the primary caretakers for children. And when you're doing that, you have less hours in your day. So you're not able to bill as many hours. And so women aren't, I don't want to say they're not excelling in their careers at the same rate as men, but by the billable hour metric, they're just sometimes not able to keep up as much as men because they have other responsibilities. So I think that drives a lot of women out of the profession. The other aspect is marketing. When you get to a certain level at a law firm, you're not only expected to just do your work, you're also expected to generate business for the firm and go get clients. And that a lot of times involves going to networking events and having meetings with people and having dinners with people and going to cocktail receptions. And if you're a mom who's the primary caretaker for your kids, you're maybe not able to do that after work 3 days a week. You have to get home and cook dinner for your family. So women have a lot of times a disadvantage in that area. So all of these things I think are contributing to women having a tough time in the law profession. But trying to end on a hopeful note, there's a lot more focus now. There's a lot more being spoken about it and a lot more efforts to address some of the problems to the extent law firms can, increasing parental leave, making parental leave not just maternity leave, but there's leave available for fathers too, which helps the mother be able to go back to work if the father can stay home or the other parent. So there are trends in the right direction, but it definitely does still have a ways to go.
I know. And before I turn it to Seta, please feel free to ask questions in the Q&A section. I see a couple of questions that came in. We're going to address them in a minute or two. But Seta, from your experience being a mom and everything, can you tell us how you see it?
Yeah, it's definitely very challenging as a mom, but a lot of firms are implementing, their new changes and they're more forward thinking, such as, for example, going remote. And now we have this flex policy at our firm that allows me to work remotely 2 days a week. And that makes a huge difference in my life. That gives me, extra time with my child when I could be commuting from the office to home. So in the case of appointments, if I have scheduled that day, it's more practical to be home and log in and log in at flexible time. So there's a lot of changes being implemented that's helping keep women, for instance, in the profession. As Alexa mentioned, the legal profession is one of the least diverse professions, but consistently each year, firms are really trying to enforce change to help, enforce diversity, equity, and inclusion within their firms. So, for instance, a lot of in-house counsel signed this consent order where they're all requiring their billers to be female billers or of racial and ethnic underrepresented groups. So they're even forcing anyone who's on their panel of attorneys working on their accounts to meet these numbers. And that's all the efforts you're seeing within companies from the general counsel side to the law firm side trying to make changes. I had a client who actually meticulously looked at their bills, and if they didn't see enough female billers on the account, they gave our firm a red flag, as in there's a possibility you might get this account taken away from you. So it's major steps being taken in the profession, and
it's good to hear that.
Yeah, and then there's a lot of talk about the pipeline issue. A lot of firms are saying there's not a diverse talent pool to hire from. And the response to that is you're not looking in the right places. For instance, if you want organic products, you're going to choose a Whole Foods over a Stop and Shop, for instance, right? So what they're encouraging firms to do is post your job posting with local affinity groups, such as, for example, the Armenian Bar Association or the Black Law Student Association. You need to be marketing to the right audience, and that's going to help solve your issue instead of saying, oh, it's a pipeline issue. We don't have the diverse talent pool to select from. So everyone's identifying these barriers and trying to do away with them. So there's a lot of movement in the area to help diversify and equalize the profession. We've seen consistent movement. It's been minimal, but hopefully in time, more firms, more companies will really jump on action.
That's great. Before we go to our final questions, a couple of questions from the audience. There's a question about, do any of you have had experience in arts and entertainment law? Maybe the answer is no, I don't know.
I do quite a bit of, we call it media law. That's the overarching category. I'm not quite sure what you mean by arts and entertainment, but a lot of the quote unquote media law that I do involves documentary filmmakers or newscasters or newspapers or other publications. So I think I would call that arts and entertainment law to some degree. And I'm a part of a lot of different industry organizations that focus on media law. And there are a lot of lawyers from sorry, I'm blanking, like big media companies like Paramount or Bravo or VH1 or different channels that do the same type of work that I do. And it's really, really interesting work and I really love it.
Oh, yeah, Seta, go ahead.
That area of law entails a lot of contracts and litigation. So whether you land an internship in that particular area or not, there's a lot of transferable skills that you can always apply to a specialty like that too. So say you can't get a internship in that area right out of law school, right out of college, you can always focus on contracts and litigation as, areas you can have those skills transferred into.
I will say actually something that I wanted to add to the question about having a specialty in law school. The answer we gave is that you definitely don't need to, and you don't. But if you have something that you really are passionate about and want to focus on, you can absolutely make it a specialty while you're in law school. And I kind of did that with media law. I have somewhat of a background in journalism, and I was always interested in First Amendment and media. So when I was in law school, I took all the classes I could there was a media law class, there was a First Amendment class, there were a couple things that were tangential to media and First Amendment, like copyright. I took all of those classes. Every opportunity that I had to do something that was somewhat specialized, I took it and turned it into a media law opportunity. So I was on a law review journal and I wrote you have to write a piece, a note, they call it, for a journal that you're on. I wrote it on a media law issue. What did I do? I applied and got a scholarship that was focused in media law that required me to go to a high school and teach a class on the First Amendment for a couple months. So this is all to say that if you have an interest in particular, you can definitely find ways to specialize in that. But the downside of that is then you limit your career opportunities after law school, because then you're presumably only looking for careers in that one particular area. And if you can keep your options open to a lot of different things, you have a lot more options.
And you could change your mind on the road. So we have a question about, this person wants to use their career in law to support women in the context of domestic violence. Any advice?
Yeah, so in law school, as I mentioned, I interned for the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office doing criminal prosecution. They had a wonderful victims advocate program, and they dealt with a lot of domestic violence issues. And a lot of people I know started by interning there, where you don't need to be a lawyer. You don't need, you could do it with any degree. And then they decided to go to law school after that and actually become a prosecutor. So that was my experience doing domestic violence work. And there's a lot of domestic violence advocacy groups throughout New England. I'm sorry if there are people outside of New England, but in almost every jurisdiction, there's nonprofits that specialize in this. And I would say go out and reach out to them and see if you could do internships with them. And if you want in law school, you can focus on, criminal law as a specialty and do internships like at the district attorney's office. And after law school, work for nonprofit organizations, focusing on that. For instance, the Greater Boston Legal Services has a specialty area in that. So I'm happy to provide information on internships you could find in that area.
Great answer. There's a question about the bar exam, LSATs. You hear horror stories, how tough it is. Do you have any advice on navigating those exams? And also, they're talking about, can you talk about law school stress? So, who wants to start?
I can start. I'm just reading the question. So it's about the LSAT and the law school and the bar exam. The LSAT, God, that feels like so long ago now. I don't know that I have much advice for that, except that it's only a part of your application. It's not the whole application. And I think that's even more true now than when I took it. I think a lot of schools are moving away from putting a lot of importance on standardized testing, and a lot of schools are just doing away with it completely. So to the extent that helps make it a little less stressful, just know that it's not everything. They're not looking at you as only a number on a test score. They're looking at your application holistically. So to the extent you can, if you don't have a great LSAT score, to the extent you can play up other things that you've done, experiences that you've had, interests that you have, life experiences that you've had. It doesn't even need to be school related, just things that make you unique and someone who would bring a unique perspective to a law school. Those are all things that are important to a law school application. As for the bar exam, I'll be real with you, it's a nightmare, but everyone goes through it. It's kind of a rite of passage to become a lawyer. And we've all gone through it and we've all survived. It's a really miserable experience, but it's relatively short. You spend, I think it's like 2 months after you graduate only studying for the bar exam. That's basically your full-time job for most people. And you take a prep, everyone takes a prep course, not everyone, but most people take a prep course that really prepares you for the test. And they've been doing the prep courses have been doing this exactly the same way for many, many, many years. So they're preparing you in the right way. You're being prepared the same way as everybody else. And then the test is what it is. I think I've blacked out most of it. I really don't remember it, but I seem to have survived. But a lot of people don't pass too on the first time. And I mean, I think I remember before I took it, looking up lists of famous people who failed the bar exam, and like Hillary Clinton failed it the first time, and lots of other famous people that you'd recognize. And they all went on to have perfectly successful careers. So, and a lot of people take it more than once and eventually pass it. So while most people do pass it on the first time, I think I don't actually have any idea what the statistic is, but I know that it's more than 50% of people pass it on the first time. If you don't pass it on the first time, a lot of people pass it on the next time. And if you don't, then, then you take it again or you rethink your career path, but hopefully it doesn't come to that. And on law school stress, the first year is the hardest in terms of stress, just because it's a lot of unknown, and law school is different from other school that you've been in. A lot of law school classes use something called the Socratic method, which is when the professor just calls on you randomly and asks you to answer a question without, going in any sort of order or any sort of warning or anything like that. You're just randomly selected to answer a question, which is definitely a little scary. And the other thing that's different and scary about law school is that in most classes, your grade is entirely based on your exam at the end of the semester. So one test makes up your whole grade, which of course puts a lot of pressure on that one test. But it helps that everyone is in the same boat, and there's a lot of camaraderie in law school because everyone is stressed in the same way. I heard a lot of horror stories about competition in law school and people stealing each other's notes and being very cutthroat, but I did not have that experience at all. It very much felt like we were all in it together and sharing notes and studying together and trying to survive together. So after the first year, you have a better idea of what to expect, and it gets stressful in a different way because your second year, you're expected to take on a lot of additional things like journals and internships and extracurricular things. So that puts a different kind of stress on you. But the first year is probably the most stressful in terms of just the unknowns.
Seta, anything you want to add? We're sort of close to our
Yeah,
7
not
o'clock.
not to scare you guys, but they refer to your first year as 1L from hell, but it's not as bad as it sounds. I swear it goes by so quickly. And in terms of the testing, don't let that dissuade you from entering the legal profession. I mean, you don't need perfect scores, and you'll get into a law school. You'll do a great job in law school. All I say is make sure you stand out in law school, excel in your classes, get really good grades, do things like moot court and extra curricular activities, and get involved with affinity groups, and do judicial clerkships, be on law review. And that, no matter what law school you go to, at the end of the day, you're getting the same education wherever you go. And you're prepping yourself for the bar exam, and you're going to take a prep course for that too. And those prep courses really help, but you get through it. So it's all about dedication and making yourself stand out among your peers, and really excelling in the field and proving yourself that you're able and capable to really exceed in this profession. It's doable and anyone can do it. I did not have great scores. I still got scholarships. I still got through law school. I passed the bar exam on the first time. I took the bar exam last year again because I had to get admitted into Rhode Island, where I moved to. And I took that with a 1.5-year-old at home. And it was just a matter of 2 months of suffering and just really studying day and night as a full-time job. And I got it done. It's really just about commitment and motivation.
Well said, Seta. Very rapid fire, favorite and least favorite aspects of the job, and then we're close to the 7 o'clock hour. Alexa, quickly.
Sure. Favorite, I really like the work that I do. I know that's a really broad one, but I really like litigating, and I like using my brain in the way that it requires me to do. So I actually kind of enjoy sitting down and writing a brief and researching legal questions. Least favorite is probably the billable hours that
I was going to say that sounds not fun at all.
Yeah, it's not quite as bad as it sounds, but it's not fun.
Yeah. Seta.
My favorite so far has been me being able to publish in areas I'm specializing in. And in my 8 years, I've now published several articles. I've written for the National Law Journal. I got cover story of Claims Magazine. I got quoted in the New York Times, things I'd never imagined for myself ever, never thought I would ever accomplish this early on in my career. So publications is huge, and it really helps you develop your niche practice and specialty. So that's my favorite part of the practice. My least favorite, 100% the billable requirement. It's really tough and challenging having to account for every minute of your day. And especially when you have days like you have appointments, and now you have to make up that time you were out and all that, and balancing all out year end. So yeah, billables is definitely the least favorite.
Well, I want to thank you personally, Great job. This was such a fun discussion. This recording will live on our website. So to all the attendees, if you want to send this to your niece, nephew, cousins, whatever, feel free. This will be on our website in a few days. So feel free to forward it. It'll live there for a while under the event section. Huge thank you to our listeners also and attendees. Look out for future AY events. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram. If you're not yet a member, we encourage you to join. Go to our website at www.ayinternational.org. Join, become part of this active community, global network of women. Look at these wonderful women today that helped us learn more about legal careers. And our goal is to engage communities, enable connections, enhance well-being, elevate leaders, empower learning, on and on. Anyway, stay well, stay safe, happy Thanksgiving, and reach out to us with any questions. Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening.
Thank you for joining us.
Bye-bye.
Take care.